special event to celebrate 100K members. Pretty excited to see this community grown so much. And again, we're a meme group. We have fun. We post funny stuff, but we also have a big mentoring component that's become pretty popular. And started by Ren, one of our mods in our group, and we wanted to celebrate by having this live stream event where we can answer some of your questions. So if you have questions regarding engineering, careers, life as an engineer, student strategies, please feel free to post them, and we'll be picking questions from live chat. We have a panel of engineers that we've asked to help us with this event, and I wanted to give all of them a chance to introduce themselves. Starting there, if you'd like to go first, tell us a little bit about what you do and your background.
You said Tara, correct?
Correct. I'm sorry.
Yes, you're good. So, like you said, my name is Tara Zanke. So I'm currently living in the Chicago area. I'm 24. I have been an engineer for about 2 years. I graduated from Ohio State in May of 2019. So, well, I was there for about 5 years. I got my Bachelor of Science in Industrial and Systems Engineering, I think is the official launch title. So I was there for 5 years. Honestly, I was kind of going between finding what major fit, and I ended up loving industrial engineering once I found it. Someone explained it to me. I didn't really know what it was beforehand, so kind of just fell into place. While I was there, I had one internship. So I interned with Vera Bradley, and if you don't know who that is, they make handbags and accessories and things like that. Pretty popular in the US and particularly the Midwest. So I was there, I was working in their distribution center just as a continuous improvement industrial engineer intern. So I worked on just, helping them find some process improvements, lay out a new area where they were actually starting to manufacture some of their bags within the distribution center. So that was really key for me in finding out that I really liked working in retail and distribution. So fast forward about a year, like I said, I graduated May 2019. I didn't have a job offer when I graduated. I know that's a big sticking point for a lot of people. So graduated about a month and a half after I graduated, I got my current job offer. So I'm a regional industrial engineer for Crate and Barrel. So I work in the general Chicago areas where our central distribution centers are. But like I said, been there about a year and a half, going on 2 years now. Work a lot in the distribution centers. My region's a little special because corporate's also out here, so I get to kind of interact with that aspect as well. Really, managing productivity in our distribution centers, working with the other 2 engineers on my team on their respective coasts, and trying to find out how we can improve, really working with our warehouse management system and labor management system, setting those up. We're actually opening a new building in my area in a few months. So really getting to see a facility from greenfield all the way up to, go live and running and sending out packages for customers. So do a lot of different jobs. It's hard to kind of sum it all up in one, but it's a lot of just process improvement and how can we make our customer experience better. Yeah, that's kind of a general overview. I'll pass it off to someone else.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you. And Alex, would you like to introduce yourself?
All right, yeah, sure. So originally, I'm from Peru. I am a mechanical engineer. When I came here to the US, originally in 2006, I went to community college, did my first 2 years there in general engineering. And then I transferred to Virginia Tech and graduated there from 2012. And since then, I've been in the defense industry. I've gone through a variety of fields, such as a mechanical engineering technical field, doing installations, making drawings, implementations of new equipment, mechanical equipment. Also dealt with contract management in the defense industry, which is a lot of the government. And then I also dealt with industrial industrial areas, industrial sites. I worked at a shipyard, which, if you never heard of a shipyard, it's basically where ships, naval ships, go and get their maintenance done, new installations, design modifications. And then I also dealt with project management. And in the past, I dealt with a variety of different equipment, ranging from electrical components, mechanical components, air systems. And then currently doing logistics, also in the defense industry. That's more data research analysis and making projections, recommendations. So that's that side of engineering. I don't do so much of the number crunching or design anymore per se. So that's a high level background on me.
Thank you, Alex. Joshua, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Josh Davis. I am by education a chemical engineer. So I am like Alex. I went to community college for 2 years. After that, I transferred to the University of South Florida. I graduated with my bachelor's degree in chemical engineering there in 2015. Once I graduated, upon graduation, I had 2 job offers already. I always like to say that I worked very hard my senior year, but I did put a little bit of extra time and effort into, getting the resumes out and getting the cover letters out. So I made sure to, focus on that as well. But once I got out of college, I immediately started working for Stryker medical device company. The plant that I worked at was more reverse engineering. We did reprocessing. I was a quality engineer there for about 5 years, mainly working on, any kind of process improvements and making sure that the quality management system there was up to date and then, maintaining what we needed it to be. That included launching new products, helping perform any kind of process validations. You had to wear a lot of different hats in that plant. So I got to do a lot of manufacturing engineering activities, validation engineering, and then obviously anything related to qualities, NCs, CAPAs, complaints, things like that I handled for a while. After my time at Stryker, I transferred over to Cardinal Health, where I was the principal quality engineer there. Different from, regular engineer in that typically with the principal, you're more of kind of like the supervisor role for the other engineers. So a lot of the same things. And I wanted to make sure I included that because a lot of people don't get a lot of info on what's the difference between a regular engineer, senior engineer, principal engineer, staff engineer, things like that. So if there's any more questions on that, we can obviously go a little further, but basically it's more of a supervisory role over the other engineers, helping kind of prioritize projects and dictate what or delegate what other people on the team do, and helping out wherever I can, providing as much teaching and training as I can. So I was there for about 2 years. Earlier this week, I was received an offer for another job at a different company where I'm now going to be the quality and regulatory specialist at a company called Molecule, which is an air purification company. So I'll be starting there soon. Pretty much it's a smaller company, and I'll be helping kind of implement the QMS system at one of their new plants. So yeah, that's a little bit of background on me.
Thank you. And Ren, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Okay, so I'm not actually a mentor. Chris will kick me for saying that, but yeah. But yeah, I'm still a student. I'm an electrical engineering student. I'm also an intern, a second-time EE intern. I did my first 2 years at a community college, just like the rest of you guys, and I highly recommend that, by the way, because community college professors are amazing teachers that really care, and it's great to network and everything. But yeah, so right now I'm at a different university, and I'm pursuing my my electrical engineering bachelor's. And so yeah, I'm just here to kind of help guide this panel along and collect your questions. And so make sure you drop some questions in the chat when you have them, and I'll be sure to just sort of copy and paste, how I usually do every week, and get these questions answered by these fantastic mentors. Thank you guys so much, Chris, Alex, Tara, and Josh. We really appreciate you guys being here tonight. Thank you. Go ahead, Chris.
And I should also mention, Ren is the one that also does 95% of the work in the group, approving people when they join and curating a lot of the memes that get posted. So And any complaints need to go to her, not to me.
Yeah.
No, I'm a witness to how much time and effort she puts into this. Really, she does an outstanding job, and the group wouldn't be what it is if it wasn't for her.
Thank you. Yeah, you know what? I just like keep up with consistency, but really it's you guys. Like, you know, how amazing you mentors are, like taking the time out of your days and answering the questions. If all I have to do is just copy and paste once a week, then I will do that.
Thank you. My name is Chris Alvarez-Russell, and so I'm originally from Chile. I came to the United States in 2001. Before that, I did 1 year of engineering back in my home country. Came to the United States in a student visa first. So I'm a little familiar with the process, how it was at least back then. For about a year, I studied English as a second language, and then I started studying at Brigham Young University in Utah. I received a bachelor's in computer science, graduated in 2006, and then I got admitted to the PhD in computer science program at Georgia Tech, working in augmented reality and 3D graphics, and I did a number of internships while in grad school. I interned with Intel Digital Home Group and with EA, People Run Studio, working on the Tiger Woods PGA Tour game. And then with NVIDIA, which is my current employer. I did not finish my PhD. I left with a master's degree. And I am a developer technology engineer in NVIDIA. So I'm a software engineer that makes tech for other software engineers to use. And yeah, I've been doing this for 10 years now. And the cool thing about the place that I work at is that everything, it sort of, we don't do the same thing twice. We started working on making code samples for our mobile chips. Most of the code samples related to 3D graphics. And eventually ended up morphing into working on machine learning for games and graphics. That's what I currently do. Combination of machine learning and 3D graphics and such. Yeah, and well, that's me. And I was invited last year to help out as a moderator, and like I said, do very little. But, so well, we're moving on to the Q&A section of our panel, and the idea is, please, if you have questions, post them to the chat. And Ren will be picking some of those questions, and we'll try to have a conversation and see what we can learn from each other. So, yeah.
Awesome, thank you, Chris. So far we had 2 questions in the chat. One of them was, they said, I saw a lady who was a major in software engineering and ended up with labor work. Is that worth in 2021? Is the job market too tight for those in engineering? Probably, Chris, you're probably good with this.
Sure. If it's specific to software engineering, I would say no. There's, like in engineering, there's definitely more of a huge market for at the mid-level to senior. There's a little competition at the entry level, but overall, there's quite a need for software engineering. It's an industry that's growing really big, and it's projected to grow very, very fast as well. So no, there are many things one can do to sort of change their chances of getting that first job. Yeah. Anybody else would like to add, please? How do you see joining engineering in 2021?
No, I mean, I totally agree with you. Just to add in terms of software and in terms of just all of that, world in general, which, I'm a chemical engineer, I'm not a computer scientist or anything like that, but every industry is trying to move to a level of automation and data entry that comes in the form of software. In terms of like any kind of manufacturing, which makes up a large portion of engineering jobs and consumer goods and things like that, and we're moving away from a world where everything's manual and moving towards a world where everything's automated in order to do that, having somebody who is skilled in coding and helping, doing PLC logics and things like that, it is so critical, and it makes it so much easier. Every company I've worked for and every company I've done supplier audits on and things like that, all of them have some company that they've outsourced this data automation project to, and there is a software engineer that helped come code our new machine every single time. It is growing very rapidly. I don't ever see that one being a big issue when it comes to finding a job in the future, because everywhere is moving towards it.
Right, yeah. I just wanted to add that also, not only from the creation or the design of new software, but also engineers are needed for the maintenance and the life cycle of the software for as long as it's going to go. So not only for the beginning stages of the design, but also during the life of the software itself, and who knows, maybe to develop a new software in the future. So that's what I wanted to add.
So, I just realized that we might get kicked off in 8 minutes. I'll try to get, we'll try to get a new room that won't kick us off. I've never had this problem before. But let's just go on to just one more question before we do a brief pause in the stream. One of my favorite questions that gets asked all the time, which a lot of people talk about, is imposter syndrome in college and in the industry, and how do you successfully manage it? So I think maybe our mentors could give us some insight on that.
Sure. Alex, you had a complete video on that subject. What are your thoughts?
Imposter syndrome, I think it's one of those things that it's maybe the one thing that all engineering students have, and especially as you go into your second, third year, maybe you get a bad grade here, you get another bad grade there, you start questioning yourself, you start thinking, man, am I going to be good enough? Am I going to be able to perform all the tasks that I'm going to be needed to be performing as an engineer? Am I going to get fired after 1 month? So one of the things that I recommend young engineers in my YouTube mentoring channel is that realize that engineers are people. That's one of the things that really helped me overcome this imposter syndrome. When you join the field, you're going to be running into engineers who are funny, who are awkward, who are going to be who are going to be smart. Also, some engineers are not going to be smart. And the reason I'm saying all this is because they're just regular people. So don't put them on the pedestal. People are going to make mistakes. So when you join the field, you're not going to be expected to know everything. You're not going to be expected to know all the answers, and people are going to expect you to be clueless at some point. Now, I'm not saying that you don't have to know your basics, that you learn the engineering principles when it comes to, for mechanical engineers. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't know the first law of thermodynamics or the Newton's 3 laws, but you have to have some level of foundation. But just know that you're going to get over it, but by learning the duties on the job, and also as time goes by, you have to let time go by. And once you settle in, you feel a little more comfortable. Before you know it, it's going to go away. So just take it one day at a time and realize that you're not going to be expected to know all the answers, because I think that's the biggest fear. I want to say that you join the field and then you think that you're expected to know everything, but you really are not. You're there to be trained for at least the first couple of months. So that's my main take on that.
Absolutely, and I've seen it, and I've seen it myself many times. It's very common for someone new to the field, when they get the first job, it's almost to the point where senior engineers know that they have to go to the junior engineers and to kind of check on them, because junior engineers are not going to come up with questions most of the time, because they think, no, I'm this engineer that needs to know this, so if I go ask questions, I'm going to be made, and they're going to know that I don't know it. And not like that. I have questions all the time. I have mentors myself. So the mentors for a senior engineer are called principal engineers, and they're guys that to maybe my 10 years in the field, well, they have 20 or 25. But there's always someone you can learn from. Anybody else like to add anything else about it? Yeah, please, Sarah.
Yeah. So it's interesting for me because, like I said, I'm just about 2 years into my career. So I'm very much so like in that position where, straight out of school, kind of, I remember very vividly trying to kind of work through this. And I actually ended up in a position where it was supposed to be for someone who had more experience. So I really kind of felt that additional pressure. And I think I might have mentioned it before, but so I'm on a team where it's actually 3 engineers and we're all on different coasts. And my manager is actually also on the West Coast. So walking into that straight out of college was very intimidating. And while I do obviously work with a lot of people at my distribution center, a lot of them are older. They've been in the industry for a long time in their different roles. So it's kind of hard to, work through that. But truly, I think as time goes on and as you get more comfortable, you do start to notice it go away. And I mean, people deal with it at all points in their careers. And it's really a matter of, getting comfortable with knowing what you don't know and not being like you have to know everything all at once. I think everyone is really still kind of learning things as they go. And that's one of the reasons why I like industrial engineering is I work with a lot of people. And even when it comes to, working on a process on the floor, I'm never going to know as much as the people who are doing it out on the floor, no matter even if I designed it, they're living it. So to me, it's just one of those things that you're never going to know everything, and kind of accepting that and, learning and going forward, and really just not being too hard on yourself. I know, especially in college, a lot of the times, engineering students particularly get very competitive and hard on themselves with grades, and we almost get ingrained to feeling competitive and like we have to know everything, especially when we have, professors who try to trick us on tests with like the hardest questions they can think of and the most obscure theorems and things. But you have resources. You don't have to just necessarily know everything off the top of your head all the time, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tara. And I don't know, Ren, if you want us to drop and come back.
Actually, just continue because I might be able to upgrade really quickly.
She's muted. You're muted, Ren.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna say, you can actually just keep going because I might be able to upgrade it really quickly. So,
Okay.
Cristobal, maybe you could answer a question for us. What does a project portfolio mean in your engineering discipline, and what's the best way to present it?
Yeah, that actually was kind of a question for me, because for the panel, I've always talked about project portfolios being very important, much more important than grades, because it's something you can show as someone, a manager. Let's say if you don't have work experience, the next best proxy for knowing how well you're going to do as a job or the skills you have is going to be projects you've made. And at least for software engineering, it's kind of pretty well defined. You're supposed to have a GitHub repository where you have all your code. And ideally, you also have your projects posted somewhere. If it's a web application, well, you have like an instance of it living somewhere that people can play with. If it's something else, maybe you have a screenshots of the application or a YouTube video. But I don't know exactly what it means for other engineering disciplines to have a project portfolio. I'm curious, what does it look like in industrial engineering or chemical engineering? I would like to know. Who would like to go first? Electrical engineering as well. I would like to know about that. Josh, you wanna?
Yeah. So for me personally, I've only asked for a portfolio in terms of like if I'm looking for chemi or if I'm looking for a specific person. I'd ask for it later on, like for somebody that has a little bit more experience, is not like a an entry level, just because I know they don't have much early on. But for me personally, if I am asking somebody for a portfolio, typically it's somebody who's going to handle some form of project management, whether that's in a principal role like you said, or any kind of low tier manager role, or any kind of supervisor, anything like that. What that entails is most of the time these people have some form of Microsoft project file that shows, hey, this is kind of like the project timeline that I went through. Also, if we have any form of automation that we plan on having them do, we'd like for them to provide that information to us in terms of like, can you show us any form of the project plan? Can you show us any validation activities that you performed? Can you show us any kind of coding activities that you performed if there was a PLC or anything like that? Just because, as you said, when we are hiring for a more specified role that has those skills necessary and we need them, being able to show that information is much more effective than talking to them about it and having them do some kind of assessment for it. It isn't as practical because it could be pretty long. I've seen where people do assessments for things like that, and it's very difficult to look at those kind of soft skills. So for me, when I look at project portfolio, it's typically related to project management, and it's just showing me the full timeline of it and any of the major milestones that they met and the evidence of that.
Interesting. So you would expect those to be more for like supervisory or project management roles, not so much like a new grad entry level.
Right, and that's just because I haven't dealt much with the software world yet. I know that that's much heavier when it comes to those kind of soft skills, but in terms of like a manufacturing or consumer goods role, it's not as heavy right now, or not as desired, but I know it's growing into that, so it'll be there soon. But yeah, for right now, that's not heavy on what we look for, but having that information, it's extremely good when you're interviewing. It shows a lot of promise, and it shows a lot of like initiative that you were to have that information with you.
Cool. All right. All right, who would like to go next? Alex, can you tell us? One time I had a student that I networked who was a mechanical engineering student, and he had a project portfolio, and I would like to know how common are in the mechanical engineering world, particularly the entry level.
To be honest, I don't have a straight answer for you. I don't know how commonly asked these questions are for entry-level engineers. I do highly suggest that people build one, young students build one and have one readily available in case they are asked about it. There's a couple of ways that students can achieve that. LinkedIn has an application where students can go and make their own portfolios. One thing that I've also realized is that you can even have a PowerPoint slides or Word document, or through Google. You can just share the link whenever possible if you're asked about it. But another way that you can build a portfolio. So let me back up here, because you asked me how common these questions are during interviews. I don't know how common they are, but I think that it won't hurt to have a portfolio in case you are asked. Maybe you are in that 2% chance of you being asked about a portfolio. So might as well have one readily available as opposed to you lacking one, because I generally think that it can help the recruiter see how much value you can bring based on your experience. They can see pictures, they can see bottom lines, what kind of problems you help solve. So that's basically like, I think it's a lot more helpful than a resume, in my opinion. It does take a little longer to go through and read, obviously, because it has more information. But I think that the visuals that a portfolio can provide for a mechanical engineer, at least, it speaks volumes of the experience that you may have. So definitely, I think it's useful.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
It was really good. We touched on like portfolios, and we had a question in the chat, which is kind of up the same alley, about how crucial are internships, and that's a really popular question that gets asked every week. So someone was saying, how crucial is having an internship experience, and even like after you get a job, even after you graduate. So if somebody's not really able to get an internship during their undergrad, does that hurt them in the long run? What do you guys think about that?
No, I don't think it makes a massive difference. It does help. It does help. Absolutely. I did do an internship while I was in college. But when I was interviewed for my entry level job, um, I asked my boss then, who hired me at the time, what made me separate myself from the others. And he said very clearly, to be able to have that enthusiasm, to be able to show that you're willing to adapt, that you're willing to learn. They're going to ask you the very simple star questions, give me an example of this, or show me a point where you struggle with this and what you did to overcome it. It's testing your adaptability and your creative thinking. A lot of people have said it in the chat. How you market yourself is everything in an interview. It is extremely important. It matters more than anything else. And being able to kind of spin things the way that you need them to spin is extremely important. So yes, while an internship is important, it's not everything, because at the end of the day, you can market yourself however you want. I was a C's get degrees kind of guy, and I fell into an internship by luck. They didn't ask me a single question about my internship on my entry level job, but I was able to sell myself, and I was able to market myself and show them that I was excited. I did an ungodly amount of preparation before I went into the interview. I researched the company. I researched as many of the people that I could that I was interviewing with. I made sure I had like 5 or 6 great questions written down about the company to ask them, because it shows that you're engaged. It shows that you're interested in it. You want to be a part of it. You're eager to learn. You're eager to get in there and do something and make a difference. And that's what they want at the end of the day. They want somebody who is willing to, or who wants to learn, because you can teach anybody anything they need you to teach. I think that everybody here, the mentors, would agree. We can hire 90% of engineers and teach them how to do things, but we cannot teach an engineer to want to learn more. That's something that they have to come on their own with, and that's what you're wanting to show. So
that's a good point. I agree in some parts. And maybe just a different industry. And at least in mine, internships are fairly important, because it's like the only proxy that or it could be that maybe my industry is software engineers. It's how to put it? Maybe let's just say software engineers a little bit harder. It's harder for us to show enthusiasm, maybe. But one thing that I've noticed is that they do heavily use internship as sort of a proxy to see how well someone was going to perform in a job. And it might not be perfect. And again, it could be just a difference in industry. I don't know how it is in other disciplines. What do you guys have you guys think?
I have like a little bit of a different perspective on internships, because I know that I was super lucky to get my first internship when I was only a sophomore, and I'm over here applying for internships during like COVID era. So it's a little bit tricky, because when you're interviewing and everything, you're not actually there in person. It's not very personable. So I kind of felt like, for my second internship that I just landed for this summer, what held me kind of a little bit over other people was that I had an internship already. So they even said that in the interview, that the fact that I had that previous experience kind of set me apart. Also, like when I added it to my resume, I was like really careful to also link my research presentation from YouTube, and just sort of like put myself out there, even though it is like, COVID times and everything, it's hard to relate to people. So as much of stuff as you can add to your resume, it's definitely better. I think that every situation's different. I think like kind of what Joshua said, where like in his situation, he like, it wasn't really too important, but I feel like for my situation, it definitely gave me an edge on other people. What about the rest of you guys? Have you guys had experience?
Yeah, I think for me, it's hard to say, obviously, because I did end up having an internship, so I don't have the perspective of not having one. When I was interviewing for positions right out of college, it was a lot of what I was heavily asked, but it was more so of, I was asked about the projects. And I did also list some projects, on my resume that were just school projects. And I was asked about those just as much. So I think it helped when I really put industry specific projects down. So when I think about I know that I had a facility design project that I had just in school, and that was a really helpful project for me to put down because it is kind of directly applicable there. But I was also asked a lot about, what did I do in my internship role? I don't think it's the end of the world if you don't have one. They are very helpful. And I think more than anything, it's really helpful to get your resume to a person and to get you through to the interview portion where you can really show yourself. And I think that's just kind of the biggest part is it does help kind of build your resume and show what you have done. And to be honest, like I said, the position that I'm in, they kind of expected more experience. And I think that kind of shows that it's not necessarily only about the experience. It's about, who you are as a person, what you're willing to learn, and those aspects as well. So I recommend them, but like I said, I don't think it's the end of the world or you're just kind of screwed if you don't get one. And to answer kind of one of the questions before, I don't think it matters a ton if you have the internship before or after graduation. I do know some people who struggle to find full-time jobs without an internship right out of college. So they actually went and did an internship then right after graduating. And that did help them kind of get their first full-time position. So to that point, I don't think they really look at when you had the internship as much as, what you did and how it's applicable to the positions you're applying to.
Yeah, and I did want to mention, Josh brought a very important point, and it's that when you're applying for a job, you should do a ton of research about the company you're applying, because that sort of surgical approach where you prepare to sort of give your all to that company, it really helps. It really helps the candidate to stand out.
Yeah. I want to add really quickly, maybe to close this out. But so I want to emphasize two things. Number one thing goes to the marketing that we have for ourselves, and I want to point out that the most qualified person doesn't always get the job. That's for sure. I 100% believe that. And the other thing is, so just like Joshua was saying, I had an internship before I graduated, and through my networking of my internship, I was able to get a job upon graduation. However, I do have a civil engineering friend who she never had any experience, and she basically used the same method that Joshua was talking about on getting familiar with the company, showing that enthusiasm, knowing the projects that they're working on, getting familiar with the people that will be interviewing you, the recruiters, speak the language of the company. And the more you know, and the more you show that you're interested in working there, the higher your chances of you making a connection with the recruiter, which it's the bottom line when you approach someone with a career fair or a job fair. Because if they don't like you, they're not going to call you regardless of how qualified you may be. So you have to make that connection. And I think that, of course, if you have also all the qualifications, or at least the basic qualifications, I think it can take you very, very far and much more likely to get hired. As someone that has maybe 3-4 internships, but then they're not personable, they don't know anything about the company, and they just act like they don't care. So you have to work for it for sure. That's all.
Absolutely, and definitely you bring a really important point, is that showing that you care about the company, you've done the research. There's another thing that the managers evaluate, and that's culture fit. And if you're already speaking the language of the company, like Josh mentioned, if you did the research, you show more like a culture fit than a person, like you said that they don't look like they care about it. They're just interviewing because they just want any job. Definitely. The other, I guess, close to the subject of internships, I wanted to mention is a huge benefit of an internship. And the reason why companies have internship programs is because instead of a less committal way of trying out a new employee. And this means that if you do well on the internship, you basically got your foot in. When I did my internship with NVIDIA, and I did well, and At first, it started out as I'm doing an internship for the summer as a, I don't know, PhD student or whatnot. But then I told them, I like the work here. I'm in the process of looking for my way out of the PhD program. Um, I would like to be more considered for a full-time position afterwards. So we tweaked the internship a little bit to less of a graduate level internship to more like a prospective employee internship, and it went well. That meant that at the end of the internship, I basically only had I didn't have to apply again. All it took for me was to sort of have an agreement to touch base in a couple months, closer to my graduation. And then all it took is basically just that informal email, and I got an offer. I didn't have to interview or apply or anything. So that's a big value for internships as well.
Right.
It's a very multifaceted. There's a lot that can be said about internships.
Yeah. Chris, yeah, I think you definitely bring a good point there, because it's in the best interest of the company to hire you, because they've already invested resources in training you and reviewing your resume and recruiting you. So you already sunk cost. So the best outcome for the company would be for you to obviously want to work there, but at the same time, the company finds a gem. They're like, oh, this person is really good. Like, we need to bring her or him on.
And they already vetted you. So getting a former intern that had a good review, it's a much less risky way than someone from the 100 online application stack. So yeah. It's just a great question. We could probably go on for another hour. Maybe we can move to the next.
Well, we can move on to another really popular topic. Everybody always asks every week about master's degree and is it worth it to get one, and how did you pay for it? Was it helpful? What type should we get? Those type of questions. So if you'd like to start us off, Chris.
Yeah. Sure. So in my case, when I started grad school, I did not want to get a master's. I wanted to be a professor, a computer science professor at the time. And things ended up working differently. I realized that I really liked prototyping, cool, kind of cutting edge things, but I did not like the whole research, and I wasn't that great at it. And what I mean by that, the idea of coming up with something new, and you try and it doesn't work, so you have to iterate over and over until you get a result that works, and then you get to write about it, and then do more revisions on the paper and more revisions on and then you submit it to a journal or to a conference. It'll get rejected, so you tweak it and resubmit it to another one, and it's sort of a different thing. And there's people that love this, and it's great. I realized that I wasn't that great of a fit, and I wasn't that great at it, but I did like the part of prototyping stuff that's sort of a cutting edge. So my PhD basically ended up turning into a master's degree. But originally I wasn't going for a master's, but I ended up with one. Hello, Hung. We have a want to introduce Hung Q. He's actually the owner of the group, the admin. He created it a while back. So as I'm mentioning, a master's degree, it's a great thing to have, in my opinion, for certain types of jobs. I don't think that everybody needs to get one, because with a bachelor's in engineering, there's a lot of jobs that they already qualify for. So I don't know. I would like to open it up and what do you guys think?
So
I know, Alex, you had a. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just gonna join in because I did my master's, and I actually used my master's as a pivot point. So in my undergrad, so my background's electrical engineering. So in my undergrad, I did nanotechnology. So it was all like, nanotech, all this research stuff. And I thought I wanted to get into solar cells. So I was really into solar cells at the time. But then I actually found out that I wasn't really into it. Like, I wasn't really into research and like having to go to a lab all the time. So what I did instead was, because it was really hard to find a job after my undergrad in nano, especially in Canada. Usually a lot of our, I guess, nano grads, they go to San Fran or something to work. for one of the Silicon Valley companies. So what I did instead was I went and did a course-based master's that offered a co-op program. So, or we call it co-op internships, I guess, in the States. So I was able to take courses related to power systems. So like, depending on the master's program, it let me take 2 undergrad courses, but then it also let me take other master's power courses. And I was able to do 2 co-ops with companies that, kind of related to what I wanted to do. So because of that, I was able to make a pivot and change my career. And I think that's one useful thing that you can do with the master's. So if you're let's say you never did a co-op or internship in your undergrad, or you find out that you don't like what you're doing, you can actually do this pivot. And I've been seeing a lot of people do this with software and computer science. So my university in Canada, they offer a 2-year computer science degree now, where if you've done an undergrad in engineering or an undergrad in science, you can actually pivot to a software career doing this program and also get the same kind of experience and internships. So you still get the same opportunities as the people who are in the comp sci program. So yeah, so there are some pros of doing a master's too if you want to make a pivot. And like Crystal said, a lot of people go into masters because they're actually really interested and really want to research, work on some cutting edge technology. And yeah, that's what I just wanted to add.
Thank you. I know, Alex, you've had a video about a master's degree. I think more than one.
Yeah, actually, I talked quite a bit about masters and based on my experience and also based on research. So the way I see it, I'm going to try to summarize, because obviously there's a lot of different angles that we can take when we start talking about master's degrees. As Hank was just saying, you can use it to pivot your career. You can also use it to be an expert in one specific area, field. If you want to do research later on at a company, you want to be a research lead. Another way that you can use master's degrees is, for instance, if you want to go up the corporate ladder through the business side. So when we're talking about going up the corporate ladder, one of the things I've noticed is that you have the business side of the corporate ladder, which is when you start talking about engineering directors, CEOs, chief technology officers, and those master's degrees, after working with people that go up the corporate ladder, they usually hold master's degrees like MBAs. They're very common. And also have the systems engineering master's degrees. They're very common also when you go up that side. However, when you go up the engineering corporate ladder, when you're talking about principal engineers, senior engineers, like chief engineers, I haven't really seen master's degrees being that common, although some of them do have them. But I think when you go up the engineering, like the technical side, that's when your experience counts the most. I've seen several chief engineers with 25, 30 years of experience, but they don't just have a bachelor's. Now, how much is that because master's degrees weren't really that popular in the past? Or maybe 30 years from now, we'll have all chief engineers with master's degrees. Like, who knows if that's a requirement, that's because of the time where they were trained, they went to school, and where they got their experience. But yeah, I think that when you look at a master's, there's a lot of things that you need to take into consideration. And it's a difficult decision because you don't want to just waste your resources, your time, your money. Maybe you get into a field that later on you find out you don't like it. And so one of the things that I personally suggest, because I was going to do a master's degree right out of college, but I ended up not doing it, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna work for a couple of years and see how I like it. And I realized later on that a master's really wasn't going to be useful for my own career purposes. And so I said, you know what, that was a good call. That was a good call that I didn't do it. And also because I realized that I was actually doing the same work with people that had master's degrees. We were sitting literally side by side doing the same thing. So I was thinking, okay, well, I'm glad I didn't do it. But again, this is going to be based on your specific situation, so it's just it's a very, very multidimensional equation that it's just hard to just say you should do it, you shouldn't. You have to really take a look at your own specific situation.
That's a great point. And I mean, between Hong and you, Alex, you kind of defined two really good reasons why you should do a master's degree. One when you're trying to pivot your career, and another one when you're trying to become an expert in your field. And and by that, there's a subset of all engineering jobs out there, including entry level, that require more knowledge than you get with a bachelor's. Like maybe usually in a lot of degrees, there's senior year, there's all these introductory courses to very specific subjects that are kind of very advanced. And those are probably subjects that if you really want to be good at, you really need additional graduate level classes on. And that's a really good place for the master's. What I found to be the interesting question is when it's not a good idea to get a master's. And I mean, as you pointed it out, many times you were working with people with masters, but you guys were doing the same thing even though you didn't have a master's. So it probably they could have saved the time, resources, effort of a master's in that case. Many times I see in a group people saying, well, I want a master's just to be more competitive, or one time I just want a master's so I can postpone my student loan payment, and that one really made me cringe. Because graduate student loans in the US are much worse than undergraduate loans. They're not the same piece. But yeah, I think it's a good point about resources.
Can I add one last thing? Is also one thing that I've noticed is that some companies require you to get a master's. They need a master's in the requirements for a certain position, just so that they weed out a lot of applicants. Like when it really comes to doing the position, like you really don't need for some positions you really don't need to be an expert. And so what I suggest people do, if they have a certain position in their goal or in their site as a target, I suggest that they run a search of those positions. And if most of those positions require you to have a master's, then that may be something that can be useful to you. So I'm just saying that a lot of the times companies they tell you need a master's, but in reality, I mean, do you really? Does another company doing the same thing require you to have a master's? Like, take a look at that. Like, why not?
Yeah, so from like the multiple companies I've worked at and like looking at their job postings and when they are recruiting, I don't even think they want someone to meet all those requirements. Like you guys all seen the memes like, oh, 15 years experience or something, EIT position or something like that. So like if you see something that interests you, like it doesn't hurt to apply.
Absolutely. I don't know if you guys, I like the YouTube channel called Joshua Fluke, and he's very jaded about this kind of stuff, and I actually agree with him. List of requirements for a job are a Christmas list. They're not a checklist in many cases. There are certain core requirements that they're going to need, but a lot of times they know they're not going to get someone with every single requirement. Apply. Don't hold back. If there really is a requirement, we'll let them make the decision. Don't you make the decision for them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to chime in just on that really quick.
Please.
Honestly, when I was applying for jobs, it was weird to me, but I got the farthest in the interviews that I thought I was probably the least qualified for and hit like the least amount of things on their checklist. So, I mean, I always push it. Like, if you even like kind of want to apply, let them make that decision. And I think from there, it's kind of all up to, like we said before, marketing yourself. So yeah, definitely don't hold back on that.
Absolutely.
And I wanted to add too, my cousin in the chat said that she even finds like getting like a PE or FE is like way more valuable than a master's degree. So, I mean, different strokes. Did anybody want to add anything onto that, or should we move on?
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
I was just gonna say, so you asked part of the question as well was, what should I go for in terms of a master's if I were to do one, and how should I go about, if I wanted to pay for that? So I did not do a master's out of college. I'm actually slowly working. I was slowly working on one for a while after college. There's a lot of things that go into it, right? For me personally, I just see it as a master's is, an extension of your education and an extension of your experience, which I know everybody has already said before. But keep in mind, and I'm sure a lot of people know this, that whenever you work for a company and you choose to go to school, whether you do like online or if you do night school or whatever, they do offer tuition reimbursement. So, that is a simpler option. That's the reason that I chose to go back, because my company offered to help pay for it. That does happen for a lot of full-time, employees if you have a job at the time being. And I always recommend to any of the younger engineers that I work with, that didn't do a master's, that it's a good time to look now. It's a good time to double check, just because for me personally, once you get into the field and you kind of see what the role's like, see what your job is like, see where you want to go, because being out in the field and seeing what you're doing and where you want to go, that now says, okay, I know what I want to do in my career in the future. So now I know what kind of skills I need to get, right? So like I wanted to do the people route, not the technical route. So I went to go do an MBA, because as they said, the technical role experience matters a lot, but climbing the corporate ladder, they do care a lot about that master's degree, especially like an MBA. Plus, and then leading kind of into what is the other thing, what master's degree should I get? If I did a degree in chemical engineering, which I did, right? For me personally, I would want to do a master's degree in something other than chemical engineering, maybe biomedical engineering, maybe an MBA, something like that. That just shows how versatile you are, how much more extra skills you have gathered in your time. So, don't just be like, I did electrical engineering bachelor's, I'm going to do electrical engineering master's. If that's what you want to be and you are an expert at that and you are the master, that's great and all. But keep in mind, like, once you get in the field and you see, hey, maybe I want to do this or that, and it's a little bit different from just being a software engineer or an electrical engineer, you might have a little bit more of that extra experience or that extra, capability because you chose a different master's degree. So just make sure you try to think about it in a versatility kind of way, because it does help a lot.
Absolutely. And I think Alex also mentioned, figure out what role you want, which is the same thing you're saying. Figure out what role you want, and then figure out the education and milestones you need to hit to get there. It's a lot easier to it's a lot better to know exactly where you're going before you try to figure out little by little where you're going to go, because you're going to end up who knows where, right? And there is a big problem where people take on all this education that sort of doesn't lead them in a particular direction, or it's a direction they could have taken just by not doing the masters, just going and working in experience. It's a great answers from everybody. I think that it's definitely a question that comes up a lot in the Mentor Me Monday threads.
Yeah.
So if it's okay, I can move on to the next one. This is a really interesting question because I haven't seen this asked at all, and as a student I'm really curious of what you guys are going to say about it. But one of the questions is about how a resume should look when you're first coming out versus how it will grow and modify over time. I think Josh has a good perspective on this, like about resume changes over career progression.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have like some examples of what my resume looked like fresh out of college that helped me get the job that I have now. And if I can pull it up here, I can share my screen and kind of show you guys example of what it looks like then versus what it looks like today. Let's see here. Yep, this is perfect. So if I can, I will share my screen really quick and show you guys what I am talking about. So perfect. Okay, let me know if you guys can see my screen okay.
Yes.
Perfect, awesome. That's okay, I'm not worried about the personal info. It's an old resume. I'm sure everybody's seen something relatively similar to this. Your basic information at the top. Some people choose to have like a purpose statement or an objective or a goal, right? I think that is very valuable because it's your first chance to kind of include some of those, attention grabbing words or whatever. In terms of coming out of college, right? your first thing is always going to be your education, though. That you have to show them that you are, you have the knowledge, you have the degree, you have what they're looking for in their qualifications, because the first thing they're going to put in there for an entry-level job is you need to have a computer science degree or something relevant, or a relevant technical degree, right? So you put that information there, as well as, and I think that Ren mentioned this earlier, you gotta throw in some kind of project, show what you did. That is your, here is what I've done as experience. Here is an example of what I'm capable of. I don't have experience, or I don't have an example of a project I did at a company if I didn't work at an internship, right? But this is a perfect example of what, hey, this is showing you what I've done, right? Obviously, if you have an internship, you can put that right afterwards, because that shows what you did. That shows the engineering jobs that you have worked at, anything like that. I put also my capstone course. I did a capstone at a company as well, where I was basically like a design controls engineer for a little bit. And then at the very bottom, over time, interviewing people in the field for the jobs, for entry-level jobs at my companies, this has become just a huge part right here. Useful skills and programs that I use in the engineering field. Because at the company that you are applying for, they are always going to have some form of product lifecycle management system that they use. They're going to have some form of quality management system, software that they use. They have some form of PLC logic system that they use. All of that software matters a lot, as well as what are the other soft skills that you're really good at. Anything related to Microsoft Office, if you can put that in there, it's still valuable. Don't think that something like as simple as I'm good at all of Microsoft Office, including Project, that it's not helpful, because it is extremely helpful. We don't want to, as an engineering supervisor, I don't want to have to spend time teaching somebody how to do Project. If they're capable of knowing it, that's fantastic. That's a huge help. Showing that you have done something related to Lean Six Sigma, or any kind of success project, or any kind of process improvements, or lean initiatives, that is very valuable too. All of this stuff, if you have any kind of information on it from the job description saying, hey, you need to have familiarity with this, this, and that, right? And you have any kind of information on what that is, or you've learned it at any point, you need to make sure you put it in there. That's the example of tailoring your resume. That is extremely important. You always have to tailor your resume to fit exactly what that company wanted. Obviously, at the end of the day, you don't want to lie to them, but if you can spin this is your first chance to market yourself. And earlier when we talked about internships, obviously the internship is the biggest grab. It is. So if you have it, you have to put it in there. But if you don't have it, there are many other tools and capabilities that you have to put into your resume that will show them. Same thing with a cover letter. The cover letter is the first thing they read too. A lot of resumes that I get, maybe 5 to 10% of them have cover letters. So that 5 to 10%, those people, I'm like, they went the extra mile. They took the time to write something to me personally. That means something to me. In terms of today, though, it's changed a lot, I don't have an objective anymore, because I have a lot more experience. And it is true, if you have a resume that's 4 or 5 pages long, I'm not going to look at the whole thing. I'm going to probably look at the first couple of pages. So, your first couple of pages are your real estate. That's what really matters. If you have more, that's great. But at the end of the day, as your resume grows, your education is going to be a little less important, to where I might put it at the very end to show, hey, I do have a degree, by the way. I didn't just cheat my way through all of these jobs. I do have a degree. I still have my box at the end here that shows, hey, here's some of the skills that I'm capable of. They've gotten a lot more specific into validation activities and things that I know other companies are going to have, and things that I've found on their job description that they're like, we want this more than anything. This is the resume I used for the job I was just offered, and they want cross-functional team leadership. They want all of these things. And I'm like, okay, I have those. So I took out the things that I was probably the most proud of, and I put the things that I know they wanted. And on top of that, I also included any information on projects or tasks that I did that I know fit the job description that they want. So resumes, they're going to change over time, but the main priority, the number one thing that will never change, is you have to tailor it to make sure it fits exactly what that company wants, because that is what pops out to them.
and that's such a good point. So there's basically two approaches for people graduating from school. There's the surgical strike approach, and there's the shotgun approach. And most people go for the shotgun approach. Send 100 applications and see whatever you can get. And there are other people that maybe doing what you did. You pick certain companies that you know have the roles that you like, and you take the time to tailor your resumes, change the text, maybe change the skills you focus in to match what the particular opening or whatever the company does matters. I personally see more success from what I've seen with a surgical approach, more so than the shotgun, because now you're actually applying companies that you care about. With a shotgun, you're going for whatever you can get, and maybe that might be a contributor to sometimes some people landing a job, which I'm grateful for because I can start paying loans or whatnot, but feeling that maybe they're not super excited about the job they're in. Right. What are your thoughts, Alex?
So I have one thing to add. I agree with you guys on everything you just said. There's one thing I want to add though. When you're developing your resume, and we're saying, okay, you need to add job description keywords. You need to let them know that you have what they're looking for. You need to make a connection in the experience that you're describing and not just put, okay, there's a resume that I checked out earlier, and there's a skills section on the resume. And the skill section was, your typical Microsoft Word, like AutoCAD. So this person was just changing the skill section and putting keywords from the job description, but then the 80% of the body of the resume was still very, very general, like something like unrelated to the job description that he was applying to. And he said that he sent this out. It was a shotgun approach. He was just switching a few words on the skill section and then thinking that was tailoring your resume. So when we say, I just want to make it clear, tailor your resume, you want to make sure that the whole resume fits what you're applying to, not just one little section of the resume. So I just wanted to point that out. And there's also another resource that gives you feedback on how relevant your resume is. Jobscan.co. It's a pretty good resource that I think a lot of the students can use. If you're not aware of it yet, it gives you a score on how relevant your resume is, how much it fits the job that you're applying to. You literally just copy and paste your resume and you paste the job description, and it gives you a score, and it gives you cues on like what to change, like the recommendations. So I highly suggest that students use those types of tools. I'm sure it's not the only one out there, but I think it's very, very useful. That's all.
Thank you. Yes. Anybody else would like to anything to say about resumes?
Yeah, so like what Alex and Joshua said, I really like the skill section and just mentioning what kind of software or equipment you use, like things that relate to that job you're applying for. But then you shouldn't just stop it there at the skill section. You should implement these in your bullet points and sentences. Like you should add these specific words within your job description or project description, like, oh, I used AutoCAD to draft this. Oh, I use Eagle to do this for my circuit board or something. So you gotta be specific about that. And like Alex said, don't make it general. So that's like one thing I really loved about resumes, just showing your skills, but showing how you use those skills and how it relates to their job. And another thing I always found helpful was going through job descriptions and seeing how they describe like who they're looking for and kind of right around that. So that's something I've always done. And then Cristobal, I know you talked about the shotgun approach. Were you talking more about like someone trying to get like different types of jobs, like electronics job or power systems? Because like
it was more along the lines of, oh crap, I'm a senior and I don't have any internships. I better start applying to 100 different places to make sure I get an offer by the end of when I graduate.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. It's much. I will agree with him totally. It's much more time value added with your time to take 10 jobs, tailor some resumes to fit that job perfectly and submit it, versus making up the same generic resume, Dear Recruiter or whatever, and slapping those into 100 different job applications, because I guarantee you will likely get more, bites if you tailor it and you take the time to make it worth it for them to look at it. I completely agree with that.
And it's not going to be crazy if you think about it. If you're like an electrical engineer, there's only so many different types of jobs. Like if you're going to go into consulting, okay, that's one type of resume. Oh, you want to go into electronics, that's another type of resume. Oh, you want to go into embedded, that's another type of resume. Okay, now you just have to focus on 3 core resumes and tailor them for each of those fields that you want to get into. So it's not going to be like you're going to be creating like 30 different types. So, which is great.
Absolutely. And also, the other thing that you do when you use more of the surgical strike approach is that it helps you target the other big tool that I feel that people need to be more familiar with, which is networking. You can networking when you're doing 100 applications to million places, but if you're targeting 8, 10 companies, you can try to talk to network with people in those places. And networking is huge. That's how I got my first internship. That's how I got in 2 or 3 other people hired my company through networking. So yeah, it's really, it's another dimension to it. And the other thing I was going to add, with regards to skills, like Hung said, it's important to have the skills, and it's important that they relate to the job. And it's good to have a section for them, because not always you're gonna have a technical manager looking at the resume. Sometimes you'll have HR people. Sometimes you have an ATS system, an applicant tracking system, that will be just pulling, like searching for keywords, and you need to sort of be able to check the boxes, and having them in the skill section. It's for that. It's for the HR person that may not be technical, and for the tracking system. But like Hung said, you want to have them in the actual job descriptions or projects or whatever, because that's for the hiring manager. That's for the technical person that's evaluating your resume. Thank you.
Did anyone else have anything to add? I know somebody in the chat mentioned something about cover letters. Do you guys...
I did see that.
Yeah. You guys want to give
I did grab one of mine to show really quick so everyone can see, just as an example as well. And I'm sorry I'm taking the screen so much. So this was the cover letter that I typically would send out in fresh out of college. So let's see here. This is it. So if you guys can see it here, can you guys see it okay?
Yeah, we can see.
Yeah, so this one's pretty basic. It doesn't need to be like hardcore, right? When it comes to the cover letter, all you want to do is just give them a, hey, I saw the position, I'm interested in it. Here's why I think I would be a good fit. It's really like it's a setup for your resume. It's a setup to say, hey, I'm letting you know that I'm very interested in your position. I think I'm a great fit. Here's why. Give them some bullet points here, explaining why you're doing that. And then tell them, hey, refer to my resume. I'm going to attach it here. It's really an extension of that, but it needs to be to a point where it's just introducing yourself to an extent and saying, hey, this is what I'm all about. I'm excited. I'm very interested in this job. I'm enthusiastic about it, and here's a couple of the skill sets I have that match that requirement, the requirement for that job. Like I said, it doesn't need to be extremely in-depth. You don't need to write them a novel. A one-pager is always a great thing to follow. Just do a one-page example and go with that. And this is something that I would say, aside from the resume itself, this is one where you can, have kind of like a template and tailor it to what each company wants. But yeah, this is just a good example just to show you guys something that, I use and I still use to this day. I tailor it to whatever I need it to be. So yeah, I wanted to make sure I showed both ends of the spectrum there. So
awesome.
There.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much. Anyone else want to add on that, or?
Just one last thing I'll mention. Look at it from the point of view point of view of a manager. If you do a shotgun approach, you're doing a little bit towards a lot of jobs, hoping that you bite something. If you do surgical strike, you're doing a lot for 10 jobs. Now you're the hire manager. Who are you going to hire? The guy that did a lot, prepare well, or the one that did a little bit? Because they don't see the 100 applications, so you see the one that they're putting out there. So, yeah. That's all
Curious,
I don't know if
Cristobal, does NVIDIA ask for cover letters?
I don't know.
Don't know? Okay, I'm just curious. Because I notice a lot of tech companies don't ask for cover letters. That's why I noticed. But in our industry, like, consulting and all that, we usually call for that. But just curious.
My experience in recruiting usually has been related to career fairs, and in those we usually just take the resume itself. I haven't seen cover letters when recruiting from that point of view.
Right. I think also one thing I want to add is so two things. So one piece of insight I want to share is, so I have a TikTok, and whenever I share samples of cover letters on TikTok, it gets a ton of traction. So that makes me think that there's a need for cover letters. There gets a ton of shares, a ton of comments. So it makes me think, okay, well, this is useful to people. So it makes me think that some companies are asking for a cover letter, or maybe they just want to share it. I don't know, but that's just something that makes me kind of like grind my gears. And then another thing is another way that a cover letter could be used. So sometimes the companies themselves give you a format requirement, or they have a specific requirements for cover letters that they ask you to submit. But also at the same time, though, if you are contacting a recruiter, I think that your email could serve you as a cover letter, because what does a cover letter do? A cover letter simply introduces yourself. It tells the manager why you're a good fit, encourages the manager to check out your resume. So you could technically go over your introduction, tell the recruiter like why you're contacting them, give him a specific job number, like what you're contacting them for, tell them why you're a good fit, and encourage them to check out your resume, attach your resume, and then tell them that you have to speak with them, that you would love to speak with them. So you can send that in an email. I mean, it's not technically an official cover letter, but you could still follow the same format and write an email to contact a recruiter. So that's just another approach to using a same format, but much shorter. Of course, in an email, you have to be really quick, but just something that I wanted to share.
Thank you so much, Alex. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So go ahead, Ren. Do we have any other questions from chat, or which one would you like to go?
Yeah, it seems like you guys are hitting all of the ones on the chats really good. I have one that was kind of saved. Interesting to hear from all of your perspectives on this one. What do you guys think the engineering fields of the future are, and which ones will prevail, which ones might fade away, and which ones are very important for the future? What do you guys think about that?
Who would like to go first?
All right, I'll go. I don't mean to steal your thunder, Cristobal, but I think anything computer related is definitely going to be needed in the future, especially with AI. I mean, that's a huge field that's now basically rolling out and is becoming more popular. Also, additive manufacturing or 3D printing is also a field that it's just growing and growing. It's convenience. Also composite materials, research and development with composite materials. What else? So from that sense, I guess material science, mechanical engineering, there are fields that I think are going to be highly valuable. Software engineering, computer science, civil engineering. I mean, that's not going to go away, at least for the time being. I don't see it going away. Civil engineers, another biomedical engineering or bio. I'm trying to understand the main difference between bioengineering and biomedical. Is that the same? Can you guys shine some light on that? Bioengineering and biomedical. Do you guys know
They're a little bit different. Like the field that I work in is considered biomedical engineering. So it deals more with, making machines or devices or things that supplement the human body in a way. Whereas I think bioengineering is more related to the human body. So I there is a little bit of a difference there. But you made a really good point that, or sorry, one of the things that I think you're kind of getting to that I really agree with is, for any student, you guys should immediately try to understand one really big thing here. All of my bosses and all the people that have been like in the industry for a very long time that I've ever talked to, a lot of them say one major thing. Engineers are paid to be the problem solvers. They're paid to be the creative thinkers, right? No matter what industry you work in, industries might change. It might be an industry that eventually goes away. But at the end of the day, engineers are always going to be in need because we are the problem solvers. We're the ones that fix any issues. We're the ones that are creative thinkers, and we help, adapt and overcome challenges. But not to say that other degrees and other areas of expertise don't. But when people ask me, what's going to go away, I say nothing. Nothing will go away, because at the end of the day, just because you're a chemical engineer, just because you are a mechanical engineer or an electrical engineer, at the end of the day, you are taught how to solve problems. Those problems may be specific to electrical systems or, reactions or things like that. But your skill is in being presented with an issue, and you have to create a way to fix it. That is what we do. That is a very large part of our jobs on a daily basis.
That's a really good point.
That's a good, yeah. And I wanted to add, sometimes we tend to have the perspective of, all right, I studied XYC engineering degree, and I need to get a job in XYC engineering, thinking that there's some sort of a one-to-one match. And it's not quite like that. You get people that maybe study, that study one degree, and the core skill set that you learn, like you said, problem solving, being able to take a problem someone has and figure out a technical solution to it, it's actually a very valuable skill. And that makes it where engineers, even when they go into fields outside of engineer, they tend to do very well. They tend to be, I see these videos from this channel called Shane Hummus GPS, which I really like. And he talks about how people with engineering backgrounds, they can go into business, into law, into art, and many times they end up making more money than people that study business, law, or art, because of the problem solving skills that they have. The other thing is, like, when we look at any one field, there's so many types of job, and sometimes we might get too focused on, okay, if I study computer science, I need to be a software engineer that works in back-end web development. But that's one job out of many types of jobs. Same thing, studying ME, I want to go into design, but there's so many kinds of jobs in there as well, for which a technical background is important. So I think it goes back to what Alex said. You figure out the type of role you want, and then work the steps back to get there. Don't be too stressed out about having the perfect match right off the bat.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
And just really quick, also, like, one thing that you mentioned, Cristobal, is we mentioned, it's good to have a goal, for sure, have a target. I think that one of the problems that I personally ran into was that I didn't know what I wanted to do. It's like, also, like, you graduate, I was like, okay, I'm done with the mechanical engineering degree, this is my job now, but I don't know if I'm gonna like it, especially if you're not sure exactly if you want to niche down on one specific area. This happened to me. It's just my personality trait. I'm a little, like, open, and at some point in my life, I was like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, and I'm doing many things. And then in the end, you realize, oh man, like, nothing is gaining traction. So eventually you have to niche down. But I think that in the beginning stages, if you are not sure of what exactly is it that you want to pursue, I think that it's okay to be open and try different things and see which one sticks. That's the only way you're going to find what what you want to niche down on, as opposed to you just thinking and then just grinding your gears and just, if you don't try it, if you don't actually do it, you're never gonna know if it's actually gonna end up being good for you. So that's all.
Absolutely. That's why I would encourage people, like when they're freshmen, sophomore, that's the time to try out things. Look into different types of jobs or fields, and yeah, absolutely. Anybody else have any ideas on this?
If nobody wanted to add anything onto that, I could move to the next. This is pretty interesting. So what certifications are helpful to engineering students in your disciplines? Be interesting to hear like from each of you guys, because we're all like different.
I can go ahead and start on that one. I know probably one of the things that I was asked most looking for jobs was getting a Lean Six Sigma certification. Ideally green belt or above. A lot of people look for black belts. I'm personally working on my green belt right now, but those are really high in demand specifically for industrial engineers. But also I know that positions across a ton of disciplines use that. So that's a really good one. And there's a lot of different programs you can do to get it. You can do online programs, they have seminars. And I know even my senior capstone, you had an option to do a capstone project where you could get certified. So that's probably the biggest one that I push all the time.
Yeah, I totally agree. That seems, I think that's like always number one in manufacturing. And to kind of to jump off of that as well, if you wanted like a good idea of the other ones that are similar to that we look for, or at least I look for in manufacturing, ASQ. Any ASQ certification. So if you just Google ASQ.org, they have like a catalog, and they have all the Lean Six Sigmas on there. That is like clearly like very highly desired because it's lean manufacturing, things like that. But they also have things like certified technician or certified auditor, certified engineer, certified quality engineer, reliability engineer, things like that. It does lean a little bit more towards the quality side of things, which that's my field. But I know that those things are very heavily looked at, not just for quality levels, but for manufacturing engineers and any kind of design or validation engineers. They look at that stuff too. So those ASQ.org is a great resource for a catalog of those things, and you can see the names for all those certs and Google those, and you'll see other companies as well that offer those certifications and other ones from them as well that are helpful.
Alex, please go ahead.
So for mechanical engineers, so this is just going to be based on my experience. There's number one, I guess you could say something that's very common in my years in industry has been the project management certification, the PMP. That's a very not common, but the ones that I've seen engineers get, and that really helps you transition into a more of a project management role. But the funny thing is that I've done project management in the past and I never got the certificate, but I was kind of lucky to be dropped in that position, where I was just forced to learn from other project managers, and eventually picked up a lot of techniques they use, questions they ask. I learned a lot about the culture, but you don't have to have a certification to be a project manager, but it sure does help. Another one, not so much, I guess, as a branch, welding. I've worked with welding engineers in the past. What I want to say is that I'm not exactly sure what kind of certifications they have for welding, but what I do know is that welding, it's a very, very, no pun intended, hot field in shipbuilding, at least. When it comes to submarines, when it comes to building surface ships, they're very, very highly needed, to the point that some companies such as General Dynamics and I think it's General Dynamics and Newport News shipbuilding down in Norfolk, Virginia. They even offer you apprenticeship programs where they literally pay for your school, and they train you to be this is more like a trade. It's a trade. You become a welder, but it just goes to show that welding for welding engineering also it's in very high demand. And if you're interested in that, then you can do some research on some of the certifications that you may need for such field. That's all.
Yeah. So in my industry, so I'm in the architectural engineering construction industry, and my company that I work at, we focus a lot on hospitals. And one of the important certifications is getting your PEng and just being able to stamp these construction documents and drawings. So a lot of the stuff that we're building, it's going to be used by people, and anything that's going to be used by people, having people occupy it, there's a lot of risk involved. If we, let's say for a hospital, we don't design the electrical system properly, someone could die. If we don't have the backup power that's required, someone could die. So it's, in consulting, they really want you to get your PEng, or I guess in the States called PE. So we call it PEng. So that's like one really important thing to get. But there are other certifications that you can get that kind of help you move up the ladder, I guess, if you don't want to specialize in just like doing technical design, but let's say you want to go into project management. So like Alex said, one of them is the PMP, but then some people get their MBA after, like, let's say 5 years experience, and they decide like, oh, the company's going to pay, I'm going to do this MBA. It'll help further my career in this industry. And then there's also like these other, like, I guess, minor certification that people like to get so they can add it to their signature, but it also helps them, like, I guess, expand their knowledge in a specific area. So in electrical, you're not just doing power systems. You might be designing like a fire alarm system, a lighting control system, a lighting system as well. So some people get like a certification to become like a lighting expert. I know we also have mechanical engineers in this industry doing like HVAC design, like all that air conditioning, heating, cooling stuff. They have to get some certification too. Like I guess another big one is called LEED, so sustainable design, like how sustainable is our building. There's this one thing that's called passive house now. So when you design a building, you want it to not use any active components, and it's all passive components to keep the heating and cooling within a building. So you leave a lower, they call it net zero, like they don't want any carbon footprint. So that's like another certification that like mechanical engineers can get. So those are like some of the stuff that I guess people in our the construction engineering industry we try to attain.
In software engineering, we're a bit of the odd man out, where like the United States, we have NCEES, which is the organization that basically tracks and sets the standards for PE and AFE exams. And we used to have a software engineering PE exam, but it got discontinued in April 2019. People weren't taking it. It's as a software engineer, there's always been much more emphasis on portfolios and such, like I mentioned before. There is one exception though, and that is cloud certifications. Those are actually valuable. With the event of so many applications moving to cloud environments, you have Amazon Web Services, AWS, you have Microsoft Azure, you have Google Cloud Platform. They have their own certificate programs, and those actually have value. Outside of that, there isn't much. Usually software that goes towards critical things, like for example, medical equipment, or for example, autonomous vehicles, or things like that, where there's an element of risk to the life and limb. It's usually the software itself that's certified through audits and things like that, as opposed to the people who design and write it. So that's how it works in that case.
When do you guys think that you should start looking into getting these certifications? Like how early? While you're still a student or your senior year?
I think for like the like I mentioned, the Lean Six Sigma belts. If you can get those while you're a student, do it. Like I said, we had capstone options where you could try to get certified, and it was, built into course fees then, and obviously then you're not paying for it. But like I said, when I was looking for positions right out of college, it was one of the first questions that even HR was asking about if I had any of those certifications. So if you can do it as a student, that's great. Like I said, I'm doing mine now and I've been out of school. So anytime you can do it, but the earlier I would say the better to help boost your resume.
Yeah, I saw the comment and I commented back on the chat. She's absolutely right. As quickly as possible or as early as possible for inside your means to get this, to get a certification that's valuable to the industry you want to go into is the way I worded it. It's like a shot of steroids to your resume. And even if you don't get it and then you get a job somewhere, when you're at the job, a lot of times you just talk to HR or talk to your manager, be like, hey, I'm interested in this, because it is extremely valuable in your skill set and, your knowledge, because you do learn a lot from getting these certifications. It's not just like, you take a test and you pass and you're good to go. You learn things. And especially in terms of the Six Sigma stuff, like the higher end ones, you have to do a project. You have to actually go through that stuff and show them the process of how you did a cost savings project, or any kind of cost avoidance or any kind of process improvement. You have to show that. You have to show the process or the project work. It's very valuable, and I would say that it's more of an underrated thing when it comes to engineering skills, is some of these certifications.
I remember seeing now you bring it up, a YouTube video of a guy who's a mechanical engineer student, and he got an internship at Rolls-Royce. And one of the things he was able to do in his internship is get the green belt, Six Sigma certification. Yeah. What about the FE? When's the right time? Oh, sorry. I know Hang wanted to.
Oh, I was just gonna say.
Later.
Oh, yeah. I was just gonna say, if you're not sure what kind of certifications you need to get, it's always, just good to go online and look at job descriptions and see what they're asking in there, and then that can give you a little head start. And they're like, hey, is this something I can attain while I'm in my undergrad, or is this something that has to be attained through work experience?
Good point. Look at job descriptions, because that's what you need to look forwards to, anyways, for everything you do in school. Yeah. What about the FE exam? When's the best time to take it?
Oh, sorry. So you guys have it tough in the States. We don't have. Okay, so the FE exam, from what I've been told, is the exam that you guys take in the States to become an EIT. And I think that if you're going into the construction industry, you should start studying for the FE exam right away while you're an undergrad. Because from what I've read, the FE exam contains stuff that you've learned in undergrad. So the sooner you take it, I guess what you remember from your undergrad will be a lot more helpful than taking it like 2 years later. You're like, oh shoot, I need to take this FE exam to become an EIT. Oh wait, I have to restudy all this stuff that I learned 4 years ago. So yeah, I honestly would try to start studying for it right away in your undergrad, your third or fourth year, whatever, whenever you can take it, and then just pass it. But yeah, in Canada, we don't have to do an FE exam to become an EIT, which is pretty lucky, I guess.
Do you take the professional engineering license in Canada?
Yes. So like to become a PEng or PE, you have to take an ethics test, but you also have to answer like this kind of form. There's like 30 questions, and they're technical questions or questions related to your experience. And then you have to have a bunch of like other people above you who are also PEngs or professional engineers sign off and say that, oh yeah, this person, he did that kind of work. And then, and then you have to take an ethics test. So that's what you have to do in Canada. I heard in the States, so you guys also have to do a technical test related to your field to get your PE. So another difference between Canada and the States.
Yeah, the requirements for the professional engineering license is obviously you need your engineering degree, you need to take the test, and then you also need 4 years of professional experience, design experience under a professional engineer. or 3 years of experience with your master's. So a master's degree gives you a year of experience when it comes to taking a PE. Now, the one thing I want to mention though is there are some states that allow you to take your exam for the professional engineering license right after, anytime after you pass your fundamentals of engineering test. So no longer do you have to wait 4 years until you take it, because it can be very rough studying for technical stuff after 4 years. So what they do is, doesn't mean that you get that license right after you pass the FE. So what they do is, so you pass the FE and they look at the components of the professional engineering license. You have your test and you need your experience. So what they do is they basically decouple it, and they tell you, you know what, you can take the technical stuff now, and then you can submit your experience like 3 or 4 years later, depending on your level of education. So I suggest that students in the United States look at their specific state. I know that Texas is one of them where they decoupled it. You can take your FE. I think in Texas it's 2 years. In some states it's 2 years after you pass your FE. In some other states it's anytime after you pass the FE. So if students need to go to ncees.org, and then they'll tell you exactly what you need to do for your specific state.
Just a question then, because I always thought the PE examination is a lot of stuff that you never learn. It's like what you learn on the job. And then it's a lot of for example, if you're in power systems, there's a lot of code that you start learning that you never so I never learned anything about I guess the National Electrical Code or the Canadian Electrical Code. But then after I started working, I started learning about all these code requirements when you're designing a building. So when you do this examination for your PE, it'll ask a lot of questions that relate to the code as well, like design questions. So I guess would it be tough to do this examination without having a couple of years experience?
Right, that's a really great question. I've never taken the PE. I know the requirements, I know, but there are samples of what kind of, so the PE is going to be based on the field that you're on, right? And there are sample tests that the website gives you. So I'm assuming that the website is going to tell you what do you need to study, what do you need to know. But that's why I say that you don't have to wait 4 years to take the test, but you have to go into your specific state and find out how you can take it. That's going to be depending on each situation. But yeah, you do bring up a good point, and I don't know the answer to that.
All right. Did anyone else want to add anything, or I'll move on? So we're kind of getting close to 10 o'clock. Maybe we have room for just one more question. I was going to ask about really difficult classes that you guys have taken when you guys were undergrads, and how did you overcome these difficult classes with a major topic, and what kind of advice would you give to somebody if there's a struggling student watching right now?
Being that we have experience in the field and stuff. I personally struggled a lot in school. I was kicked out of engineering school after my first 2 semesters because I didn't have good grades. I had to basically beg to get back in, and I did, and I never looked back. But I still had a tough time. I still wasn't the brightest and best. I wasn't naturally a genius or anything. But what I did change was I got to know my classmates. I got to know my peers. They're going through the same thing I am. They're going through the same thing you are. It's a struggle sometimes. School, the engineering curriculum, anywhere you go, it's tough. They are testing you to make sure that you're capable of doing this. So I would say to anybody, if you're introverted, try to get over it as much as you can. Spend time with your classmates. Get to know them. Go help them or go work with them on your off hours. Go to your office hours and talk to the professors because they want you to succeed. They do. The only problem is there's likely, 100 people in your class. So they can't just meet with you face to face, one-on-one. But if you, are with your classmates and you all have the same questions or all have the same problems, right? At the end of the day, when you guys go to the office hours, they're going to be speaking collectively. You're going to be speaking collectively on the same issues. And in the field, it's the same way. If I have an issue that I can't get resolved, I have to go talk to one of my peers, whether that's a mechanical engineer, manufacturing engineer, a design engineer. I have to go talk to them. And doing it early on by talking to your classmates and getting to know them and working together on the off hours, it is exactly like it is in the field. You have to work together. That's why you'll hear the term, when you get into the field, you will hear the term cross-functional all the time, because that, at the end of the day, that's the most important thing. You have to be able to work with others and communicate. So if you are struggling, I would highly recommend spend time with your classmates, talk to them, because no matter what, collectively, there's nothing you can't accomplish. There's nothing, because working together, you're going to find the solution.
I wanted to build on something that Josh just said. Overcoming being introverted, and the thing is, there's a difference between being introverted and being shy. Being introverted means that you draw energy from spending sometimes having time to yourself. You can be outspoken and introverted at the same time. To give an example, I'm very, very introverted, and when I was in grad school, we would try to go to I don't know, happy hours on Fridays or whatnot, and I don't drink, but I still would like to go because I wanted to interact with the other grad students, because it's always important to do so. And the difference is that we will meet, let's say at 7, 8, go somewhere, get something to eat, hang out. 10:30 rolls around and I'm exhausted. I just can't wait to just go back home. And they were just like, "Oh, we're just getting started, Chris, just stay." And I know they're going to stay up until 2 or 3 in the morning. I just couldn't do it. Doesn't mean that I was shy in a corner during all that time. It meant that spending time, I had a good time. Spending time with people, I was enjoying it, but it would expend a lot of my energy. So being introverted, there's nothing wrong with it. It's part of your personality. But being shy, it's something that can prevent you from many opportunities. It's something that there's strategies to overcome without betraying your introverted nature. I just wanted to mention that when Josh said stop being introverted, people might misinterpret that. No, you can become less shy. Now, also, I want to emphasize that what Josh said, study groups, work with people, it's very important. Right now I'm taking online classes, and for my work, I'm taking some online classes. Online classes are boring, and I can't even imagine how people in school right now are doing it. I with the whole pandemic and Zoom classes, it's just I can't imagine it. I've been doing some online classes for a year or so, and first thing I did is just try to find people to form a study group with a couple colleagues. We're going through some machine learning classes, and having someone to work with, be able to bounce ideas off, or maybe something I don't understand and my teammate does. It really helps a ton. And the other thing that I used to do is that whenever doing my homework, I would try to do it I would try to loiter, like close to where the TA offices were during TA office hours. I always found that useful. Like if I knew that TAs had office hours between 1 and 2 p.m., I would probably go around 12, find some desk in the nearby area, work through stuff, so that if I had a question, I knew that then I could take it to the TAs right away. Try to get started. That was my strategy.
Yeah, so Cristobal and Joshua had really good points, like being able to build a relationship with your peers and being able to work together and help each other. It's something that will transfer to, I guess, once you start working. But another skill I think that's really important nowadays is being able to do research and find stuff online. There's just so much stuff online right now. So like at my company, yes, I do like, like let's say if I have a question, I might go to my supervisor, discuss it. but sometimes they'll also want you to do a little initial research. You got to bring up the topic with them. You can't just kind of get spoon fed. So you got to learn how to do your own research. I don't know, there's so much YouTube videos that you can watch. There's Khan Academy. There's like all these sources online that you can refer to. So you got to put in the effort first, and then work together with your teammates to try to get to an answer. So that's all.
Yeah, and I would say high level, kind of going back to the initial question, just if you're struggling in classes, I think I was also one of those like C's get degrees kind of people, just because I wasn't as great in college as I felt like I was in high school. And I think a lot of people kind of realize that. And, I struggled a lot getting through college. I had to retake multiple classes. I ended up taking 5 years because of it. And I had to apply, and I got denied from my program a few times. And I think a big portion of it is, really kind of making the connection on why you're studying, what you're studying, and what you really want to do with it. And a good way to do that is if you can try to get an internship. It really, personally, when I was getting, really drained, it helped focus, why I was doing what I was doing, and, make me excited about it again. And I think the other portion too is just remembering, like, I feel like engineering students particularly are really great at putting on this like facade that we're all, really doing great, and that we're all hitting like great grades, and you're really not alone. And I wish I had learned that sooner on in my undergrad than I did, because I just felt like I was constantly competing. And when I kind of took that stress away, things got so much easier. So just really like realizing you're not alone with it too. I mean, on top of all the like academic resources that you have, like, don't be too hard on yourself. And if you do, if you don't do incredible in one class, or you have to retake a class, that's not necessarily going to affect who you are as an engineer and how you can succeed later on. And I will always push that. I always jump in on those Mentor Me Monday posts about that, because really, like, school is challenging for everybody. And so don't like focus in on, this is like the end of it. Like, I can't, I'm not going to be a good engineer, because it's not necessarily the same.
All right, those are all very, very great points. And I just want to add a couple of more things. It's when I was just really quick, when I was a freshman, I was taking my first calculus class, and by the first half of the semester, I was for sure gonna fail the damn thing. But then I started actually putting in the work. I actually started like going to the office hours, doing the homework over and over, asking lots of questions, bugging the professor before he left the classroom. So after obviously doing all of that, I ended up getting a B in the class, and that really showed. And the point of that is, I was about to drop out of engineering just based on my first calculus class, and until I decided, what, like, let me just actually like put in the work and try, like, do actually pay attention. And just one of the things that I tell young engineers that sometimes you just gotta grind the shit out, man. Just study, like, just get over that class. I mean, yeah, you can say a lot of things are against you. You got a bad grade here, bad grade there, but just focus on the next task. What's the next homework? What's the next project? What else is due? A lot of the times, I used to just get lost in the next semester. Oh my God, if I'm struggling right now, the next semester is going to be worse, and the next year is going to be worse. But if you start thinking about all of the things out of your control, then you start losing motivation and confidence for what's happening right now. And that just makes you go down the spiral and the rabbit hole of just negativity. So just focus on the present, what's right now, because engineering school can be overwhelming if you just put everything ahead of you. And before you know it, the baby steps that you're taking, before you know it, you're gonna be dealing with complex problems that you're not even gonna know how you got there, because you've just been so focused on taking it one baby step at a time. And then also, to close it out, don't think that you have to memorize everything when you join industry. When you join industry, obviously, like as I mentioned earlier, you have to know your foundation, you have to know your basic engineering principles, but all the specific duties the skills that you're gonna need mostly are gonna be learned on the job. And as Han was saying, like, also do your research. A lot of the times engineering comes to comes to knowing where to find relationships, how to make connections, and how you can actually find relationships between two systems or two ideas. And so that also does help a lot when you join industry. So with that's all. Best of luck to everyone. That's it.
Thank you so much. And well, we come to the close of this live stream event. I love everybody's contributions. I learn a lot, and I hope that it's been of help for people that are watching, or they may watch the recording later on. Wanted to thank you so much for your time. And also, I wanted to give, if anybody would like to shout out their social media or website or anything that you guys have.
Yeah, sure. I have a YouTube channel where I share a lot of the things that we talked about here, things that I share on my YouTube channel based on my experience and research. So it's Alex Isidro, as you can see here. I'm going to share it on the chat. But yeah, so I'm on YouTube, and that's where I have all of the content that I share on engineering. So you can type in my name and you'll find me.
Yeah. Anybody else would like to? Well, I just want to thank all the mentors that join us. It's been really great. Also want to recognize Hung. He's on the start of the group a couple years ago, and it's grown to a big community. And Ren, she does so much of the legwork.
It's all Ren.
Yeah, it's all Ren.
I've
seen how much time she dedicates, and also how much time she spent preparing for this event and doing all the legwork as well. And also a shout out for Kyushu, who will also help work out some of the technical kinks. Thank you so much, and maybe we'll do this when we reach 200,000 or something.
We might have to do it even before then, because like everyone's commenting how much they loved it. Maybe we'll do like a beers with engineers thing or something.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you guys so much.
Take care, guys.
Take care.
Yep, thank you guys.